Hi, this is your host. Dinosaurs are not just found in our natural history books. For millions of years, humans have been creating their own dinosaur-like creatures in mythology. But where did these creatures come from? How are they connected to real dinosaurs? And why do dragons always have to be so big? Join us as we count down the terrifying truth about dinosaurs and dragons. Number 8. Oviraptor. In Western cultures, when you think of a dinosaur, you're probably thinking of the T-Rex or maybe the Triceratops. But even before we discovered those dinosaurs, ancient people had their own version that they called the Oviraptor. This dinosaur was described in detail in a medieval bestiary, which is a book that describes animals. The author of the bestiary said that the Oviraptor was the size of a lion with sharp teeth and claws. It had long feathers that covered its body and head like a horse's tail. Its name means bird thief, which comes from a Greek word meaning bird and a Latin word that means to steal. Apparently, the beast would sneak up on nests of birds and eat their eggs. Much like today's ratites like ostriches, the Oviraptor may have been an ancestor of modern flightless birds. So it's possible that our ancestors saw a relative of the ostrich and imagined a ferocious monster instead. That reminds me of the first time I tried to use a smartphone. At first it seemed way too complicated for me. Number 7. Champ. If you live near water, you might have seen a lake monster at some point in your life. These monsters usually look like sea serpents and can grow to enormous lengths. There have been thousands of alleged sightings of lake monsters around the world, and some people even claim to have photographic evidence. But there's one particularly famous champ. Champ is the supposed monster that lives in Lake Champlain between New York and Vermont. According to Native American legend, Champ is a giant serpent over 40 feet long. Just like all good monsters, Champ has its own cryptozoology society dedicated to finding it. People have reported seeing Champ since the 1600s, so it could be one of America's oldest cryptids, which is a creature from folklore that may or may not exist. Some people think Champ is just a misidentified moose swimming in the lake, but others think it's something much more mysterious. Do you believe in lake monsters? Let me know in the comments. No. 6. The Dragon King. When you think of dragons, you probably think of Smaug from The Hobbit or Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. But even though dragons in fiction come in all shapes and sizes, almost every culture has a dragon myth of some kind. In Chinese mythology, the dragon wasn't just any creature. It was the king of all beasts. Dragons were associated with water, rain, thunder, and wisdom. People believed dragons could control the weather, bring good fortune, and even grant wishes. In fact, the Chinese emperor was considered the reincarnation of the Dragon King. That meant he had a duty to take care of his people and keep them safe. Unlike European dragons, Chinese dragons weren't evil, but they weren't always friendly either. They were kind of like nature spirits that sometimes helped people and sometimes caused trouble. So if you ever meet a Chinese dragon, maybe don't annoy it unless you want a volcano to erupt. Number 5. The Kraken. One thing that really scares me is the ocean. I mean, there's so much water down there and most of it is unexplored. Maybe that's why stories of scary sea monsters are so common all over the world. Take the Kraken, for example. The Kraken is a gigantic sea monster that lives in the North Sea. It's usually described as a squid or octopus that can reach the size of a small island. Whenever the Kraken surfaces, it creates huge whirlpools that can drag ships and their crews into the water. Sailors used to fear the Kraken because it was strong enough to flip a ship like a bathtub toy. But is there any truth to the legend? Well, there's definitely some truth to the giant squid part. Scientists recently discovered a new species of squid in the Bering Sea that can grow up to 33 feet long. But while that's big, it's nowhere near the size of the Kraken. Still, that doesn't mean the Kraken isn't real. Stranger things have been found in the bottom of the sea. Like a plastic bag. Not exactly a legendary sea monster, though. Number 4. Basilosaurus. Everyone loves whales, right? They're some of the smartest and friendliest mammals on the planet. But whales didn't always look like whales. In fact, the ancestors of modern whales looked more like giant snakes. These prehistoric whales were called Basilosaurus. And unlike their modern descendants, they were vicious predators. They lived from around 55 million to 40 million years ago, and their fossils have been found all over the world. The name Basilosaurus means king lizard, and this whale really lived up to its name. It could grow to 55 feet long and weighed as much as 30 elephants. But despite their size, Basilosauroids weren't very good hunters. They couldn't swim fast enough to catch prey, so they mostly ate whatever they could find floating in the water. But that's not exactly efficient. Whales today use echolocation to find food. But scientists think early whales like the Basilosaurus relied on scavengers to do the hard work for them. Basically, they were nature's equivalent of a freeloader. Don't worry, though. Whales eventually evolved to become the majestic animals we know and love today. No. 3. Plesiosaurus. You've probably heard of the Plesiosaurus before. It's one of the most famous prehistoric sea creatures ever discovered. The Plesiosaurus was a marine reptile that lived during the Mesozoic era. It had a long neck and 4 flippers and was perfectly suited for life in the water. It could grow to be nearly 30 feet long, so it was bigger than a double-decker bus. For a long time, people thought the Plesiosaurus was a dinosaur. After all, it was discovered alongside other famous dinosaurs like the ichthyosaur and the mosasaur. But unlike those creatures, the Plesiosaurus wasn't a meat eater. It was an herbivore. That means it spent its time swimming around eating kelp and other sea plants. But just because the Plesiosaurus was a vegetarian doesn't mean it was harmless. It had massive jaws filled with sharp teeth that it used to crush bones. That's right, even plants can be dangerous sometimes. 2. The fish. Fish are another animal that you'd probably never expect to be dangerous. But you should watch out for these fish. The fish is a mythological creature that's been described in many different cultures. Most of the time, it's portrayed as a huge fish that lives in a cave guarded by a dragon. Dragons seem to show up everywhere, don't they? The fish is usually said to have magical powers, and it's often used as a symbol of good luck or prosperity. For example, in Jewish folklore, the fish represents the tribe of Dan. It's also a popular motif in heraldry, which is the study of coats of arms and other symbolic designs. In some cases, the fish may have been inspired by giant prehistoric fish like today's mola mola. These fish can grow up to 9 feet long and weigh more than 200 pounds. But I wouldn't go anywhere near one of these fish. That's because the mola mola has a very unique hunting technique. It sucks up its prey whole. But if you manage to avoid its massive mouth, you'll have to deal with its poisonous spines. The spines on the mola mola's fins contain a venom that can paralyze its prey. So if you see one of these fish in the wild, just stay away. On number 1, Quetzalcoatl. We've talked about how dragons appear in many different cultures, but few are as interesting as the feathered serpent. The Quetzalcoatl was a deity worshipped by the Aztecs. It was depicted as a feathered snake that could breathe fire and was associated with the planet Venus. The Aztecs believed that the Quetzalcoatl was a bringer of light who helped humans live happy and healthy lives. It was also a symbol of fertility and abundance, which is why the Aztecs built temples dedicated to it all over central Mexico. But the worship of the Quetzalcoatl didn't start with the Aztecs. In fact, it goes back thousands of years. The earliest known depictions of the feathered serpent date back to 1500 BC. But the true origins of the Quetzalcoatl are unknown. Some people believe it was based on a real dinosaur or other prehistoric creature, but others think it was just a figment of the Aztec imagination. Personally, I like to believe that the Quetzalcoatl was a real dinosaur. That would be pretty awesome, right? Well, that's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. And if you like this video, be sure to check out some of our other videos about prehistoric beasts. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.